I won't take up too much time with this video. It's going to be a really quick tech tip on how to install the main shaft or input shaft bearing on your Honda or Acura transmission. Now this is going to be specifically for our Integra project right here in the garage, but if you're doing this on a similar vehicle, something that needs to have a bearing pressed into a tight fit, and you don't have a shop press at home, this video is going to help you out. So here we have my turbo front wheel drive Acura Integra 1997, makes just over 800 horsepower, and we have a dog box transmission that recently came apart for some repair work. So as you can see right here, the pinion completely sheared off from some third gear breakage that we encountered at the track last time, and I have my replacement pinion here, and that's all set, ready to go. Now, upon disassembly and inspection of all the other parts, I found that the main shaft or input shaft bearing, this OEM component, is worn past its comfort zone. So as you're turning it, you can feel some discomfort from the bearings inside. I don't think the camera will pick up any of the noise, but it gives you some kind of a grinding sensation. It almost feels like if there's a ball that's nicked or if there's some level of sand inside of it. And some people like to clean these out and try to get risky on it. It's a very cheap component, especially when you think about the life that it lives. This goes deep inside of the transmission at the lowest point possible inside of it, and it's not something that you want to cheap out on, especially when you can pick a brand new one up from Honda for about 40-50 bucks. Now this is the part number for the Honda B Series one, and this is as simple as pressing the new bearing in the old bearing's place, and you can see it is an OEM one, completely smooth. There's no noises or vibrations or anything feeling weird right there. So this is going to get pressed into that spot. Now we verified it is the exact same one, and while this is somewhat of an interference fit, it's typically pressed in. You might not have access to a press at your house wherever you're doing this. So a trick to do with these bearings is basically to put them in the freezer for a couple hours or overnight and have them ready to go the next morning. Before we go ahead and do that for the evening, obviously you want to verify the bearings are exactly the same and you don't have a different height or a different width. And as you can see, both the inside diameter and the outside diameter of both bearings is exactly the same. And you can use a micrometer if you want to get all fancy, but the heights are exactly the same as well. So to prep this, we're going to make sure there are no nicks or anything in the inside of the bearing housing. You can see there is a little bit of a nick right there on the outside top edge of it, but it does not protrude into the actual area where it'll be encased. And you want to make sure that you always check for those things when you're servicing something like this. Now, this input shaft bearing seal is actually a really difficult one to service in the field or whenever you're doing a refresh, since its location is under the bearing and underneath the gear stack. So if you have one that you think is going to go out or you already haven't replaced before, you want to go ahead and get that done right now. That way you don't have to do it in the future. For the removal of the old bearing, all we did was, while this was in there, we tilted the bell housing on its side, and with an extension we knocked it out from this side. You just put an extension in, catch the inner lip of it, and hammer it out evenly, alternating from side to side while it pushes out, and without a lot of force, it does come out. That being said, we're going to go ahead and put this back into its packaging. That way nothing from the kitchen gets into there, and we're going to put this in the freezer overnight, and we'll revisit this in the morning and show you just how easy it drops in. So next morning we got our bearing just right out of the freezer. We want to make sure and do this while it's still nice and cold. What I like to do is put a little bit of oil around the bore of where you'll be putting the bearing in. You get your bearing, you make sure that the orientation is correct. On this case, one side has nothing on the face, the other side has numbers and letters. Go ahead and position it. Get yourself a piece of wood. And you can finish it with the old bearing on top. You can feel as it gets to an area where it's not going in any deeper. And once it's fully recessed, I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of oil and spin that bearing around, especially since it was frozen. You don't want any condensation or anything. getting right in between those bearings.